Well, thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Megan, behind the scenes, and greetings, everybody. I hope you're healthy and well and enjoying the sunshine that Jackie talked about. And I want to thank the staff, our board members in attendance, and the amazing volunteers for being here today. The BTC has been focusing on issues related to inclusivity, diversity, and equity, and I'm really thrilled for today's seminar. And I have the great pleasure of introducing our presenter today. So please join me in welcoming Ashoo Anand. Ashoo has led the Credit Valley Conservation's Multicultural Outreach Program since its humble beginnings in 2009. In this role, Ashoo has been collaborating in building strategic alliances with other public sector agencies and community organizations such as settlement agencies, local libraries, school boards, healthcare organizations, federal, provincial, and municipal agencies, all for developing and delivering culturally sensitive programming for immigrants to connect and encourage members of diverse cultures to their local natural environment for their physical and psychological well-being. Ashoo has spearheaded many initiatives within Credit Valley Conservation to foster intercultural discussions through the creation of internal committees that provide staff, board members, and volunteers with opportunities to enhance their understanding of diverse cultural perspectives and to provide a platform to discuss racially and culturally sensitive issues, as well as to build strategic policy frameworks to address anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Being an immigrant herself, Ashoo understands the challenges and barriers newcomers face in accessing nature and building a strong and meaningful connection with local natural areas. Ashoo's education and work experience in geography, community planning, and engagement have been pivotal in developing a robust and environmental outreach program for culturally diverse immigrants in the region. I'm absolutely thrilled for this seminar, and thank you, Ashoo, for being here. It's over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael. I hope you all can see me and can hear me okay. Because for some odd reason, I can only see my slides. I can't see anybody else. So I'm assuming everything is going good. All right, so again, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining me to hear some insights from my journey and the Credit Valley Conservation's journey in engaging multicultural community members in our environmental programs. So I want to begin. Okay, so I want to begin with the question that why do we need to focus on this topic? So one of the main reasons that you and me are here today and discussing this topic is the international migration. So the Statistics Canada reports tells us that in 2020, 2019 and 2020, 44.7% of the immigrants coming into Canada made Ontario their home, which means that most of the people who are coming into Canada as immigrants are coming and residing in our communities in Ontario. Now, this is a huge focus for us because it is changing the demographic base that we are used to working with. So what that means for environmental outreach and engagement is that we are seeing more than 250 ethnic groups that are coming and residing in our watersheds. There are 45% or more population in Ontario that is recognizing as their mother language to be not English or French, but some other language. That means we are becoming multilingual in our watersheds. So the work that we do, the environmental organizations are usually demographic driven. And this ethnic shift is definitely asking us to think differently, think out of the box, and come with some creative solutions that we can use in the engagement of these diverse cultures into our programs. So what that means for Bruce Trail. So I was looking at the map when I was preparing this presentation, and I was, while taking a cursory look at the map itself, it's telling us that how the Bruce Trail connects so many major urban centers starting from Hamilton, Burlington, Mississauga, Brampton, Cambridge, even up to Orangeville and beyond. I think we're seeing a shift in the demographics everywhere, and more so in these particular geographies from where Bruce Trail passes through. So this is the home to new immigrants, people who are coming from different parts of the world and making their homes in this stretch of Bruce Trail, which means that we have to connect with many different cultural groups. Some maybe we are more familiar with, and some we don't understand much as yet. So we have to open our, minds and hearts to, connect with, those, cultural groups. And also, even in our rural landowners, dynamics are also changing. Maybe it's changing a little bit slower than the urban folks, but our rural landowners are also becoming more diverse. In the last 2 years, when I live in Milton, and whenever I would go to Terracotta Conservation Area, which is up in Halton, Halton region in the upper part of our watershed, I passed through the stretch of Winston Churchill all through. And in the last 3 years, because of the real estate boom in this area, I see so many signs of the South Asian realtors, selling properties in that stretch. So I am very inquisitive now to find out the percentage of people living in our rural part of the watershed who are from different cultures. Because earlier we thought that these people try to connect only with the urban settings, but now I think that shift is happening, and we are seeing more and more rural landowners coming from diverse cultures. So starting with the CVC, in 2009, when I was hired to run the multicultural outreach program, so our reasonings were just the same, that we were seeing our watershed becoming more and more diverse, and we needed a program, a special attention to be given to this engagement piece, where how we should connect with our multicultural audiences. And that's when I was hired. And one of the things that I have learned, and which is true till date, so it's been 12 years of awesomeness working on this project for CVC, that I can tell you the relationships and the connections that you're going to make with your community organizations that serve and they work with the new immigrants or the immigrants who have been living in our watersheds for a long time. They are a huge factor in the successful implementation of our programs. So, and I will talk a little bit more about it later as well. Oops. So now the question is how to connect and engage diverse cultures. That was something that I struggled with when I first started. So when we look at the urban parks, they are the sold off tickets for the newcomers or new immigrants who are coming into our geographies. Because these parks are very visible, they are in the urban realm, so people can connect to them very easily. On any given day, on the weekend, if you go to any park in Mississauga, Hamilton, you will see lots of people, new immigrants, people from different cultures celebrating, having picnics, enjoying barbecues, having fun with their friends and families. But when it comes to natural areas like our conservation areas, the story is very different. These are still very alien concepts for most of the newcomers who are coming and settling in our geographies. The reason being, when a new immigrant comes and starts living in Mississauga or Brampton or any one of these urban centers, their priority is to settle down. And environment is not on their radar. They don't even know the name of the rivers that flow behind their neighborhoods, because their main focus in settling down, finding schools for their kids, finding jobs for themselves, then start to understand the systems in the society here. So environment is usually not on their radar. So then how to connect these disconnected audience to us and to our programs? So it is very important to know who these people are. We have to strike a chord with these people, with our audience, with our participants that we want to engage with. We have to know who they are, what do they do, where they are coming from, what they like to eat, how they like to interact, and like how do they even relate to environment. Because as I was saying before, these people don't know us. When I first started working on this program 12 years back, people didn't know who Credit Valley was, what we did, where are the conservation areas, what are conservation areas, what you can do in conservation areas. So these are very, very distant understanding for most of the new Canadians with whom I first communicated with. And even the organizations, the settlement agencies, the other organizations that have been working with the newcomers, even the teachers that come, the elementary school teachers that come from different school boards onto our school programs, even they have been living in Brampton and Mississauga for almost 10, 20 years, but they had no idea what they can do in a conservation areas or where they are. So trying to understand your audience is the key. Because when I first did this, I went to a library and in Brampton, and I started to understand what are the different places where new immigrants go to connect for information, and libraries was one of the top ones that people like to access. So that was the first time that we took our programs into the library, because the people were there. These were the people that we wanted to connect with so that they know who we are, what we do. And those programs became instant success because we didn't bring these people to where we were, but we went to where they were. Generating interest. In the very beginning of my career with CVC, one of the settlement the agency manager asked me, Ashoo, you have all these wonderful tree planting ideas and nature walk ideas, but tell me something. What is in there for the new immigrants? Why would they come to your programs? I thought that was a very interesting question that was put to me, for which I didn't have an answer, because generally people will have that inherent interest in environmental programs and projects, because we think that people are naturally inclined to environmental issues and programs. But when I was thinking more and more about it, I came across this story which really resonated to me and helped me build this program, and I'll share that with you. So I think in like early 2000s, city of Surrey in BC and Evergreen, they both were working on a project trying to address a neighborhood issue in Surrey, where a lot of dumping in the ravines in the neighborhood they were witnessing. So this was a primarily South Asian neighborhood, and a lot of people were just throwing their computers, their desks, their furniture into the waterways, and as well as in the natural areas around the neighborhood. Now, despite different efforts by the city of Surrey, they did not see any change in behavior, because they would say that, okay, we'll do a tree planting event, please come out, and then they will talk about such issues, but people would not attend. Then they came up with this idea that we are going to change our messaging. We're trying to think from what will interest these people. So they came up with a brochure which was printed both in English on one side and Punjabi on the other side, which was the main language that people in that area were speaking at home. And the message was, clean your neighborhood because it will increase the property value for your homes. The message was, clean your neighborhood because it will bring more health to you and your family. You will have less diseases to deal with. These two aspects in that messaging was very well received by the community in that neighborhood, and they started to see a big decrease in the dumping behaviors. People were more involved in the community cleanups in that neighborhood, because property and health were the subjects that they were interested. But for us, we were able to, the environmental organization's perspective, we were able to get what we wanted them to do. So the behavior was changed with a different, angle to the problem. So over the years working on this program, we have understood that there are some common barriers that most of the new immigrants or even the immigrants who are living in our watersheds for many years have in common when it comes to access natural areas around here. So let's look at some of them. So the very first one is the lack of awareness. So usually, as I was saying before too, the immigrants have minimal or no connection with local natural areas. Even in my own experience, whenever I am trying to organize a picnic for my friends and family members here, they always want to go to Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is one of the most popular destination for immigrants because that is the only natural area that they know of and they can connect easily with. So despite my telling everybody, I see there's always a pull towards going to Niagara Falls for our picnics. And I keep telling them this is not a good idea because Niagara Falls is overcrowded, parking is bad, there's a lot of urban infrastructure, you have to do a lot of walking to get to some natural areas. Even despite all those challenges, people like to go to Niagara Falls. And I often used to wonder why. Like, I am here, I can tell you there are such beautiful treasures around here that, we can actually go in the GTA and can have a really good time. But I feel that just because my friends never had those experiences with those natural areas around here, they cannot think and make a call to not go to Niagara Falls and explore some local natural areas. So this lack of awareness is huge. Then usually people see that there are low levels of English understanding in the newcomers that are coming and settling in our watersheds. So this is a very important aspect to keep in mind when you're developing your communication and marketing materials, because usually a 10 to 12-year-old kid in a newcomer family is their best interpreter. So keeping your language, in your communication materials to that level, to the low or simple level is recommended. Transportation. So transportation is a huge challenge because usually it takes 4 to 5 years for a new immigrant to come and settle in Canada. And by the time they prepare for their license, get their G license, it takes a couple of years. So when your conservation areas, most of ours are not connected by transit, or the places where you guys do your restoration programs or volunteer programs or tree planting events, if they are not connected by transit, it is very difficult for people, even if they have the interest to come and participate. So definitely keep this in mind when you're organizing your programs. Fear for natural outdoors. People do have inherent fears about being alone in outdoor natural spaces. And this is common in many cultures, especially people who are coming from war-torn areas, people who are refugees and settling here in Ontario. These spaces often remind them of all the negative memories that they might have seen or have experienced from being alone in those outdoor natural spaces. So again, when you're developing programs, try to see if you can, develop programs where you can bring people together as a big social cohesive group rather than, having people come and attend on their own. Social and cultural norms can also restrict people's ability to participate in your programs tremendously. So for instance, if you are planning a restoration program on any part of the trail, and you're inviting, the community members, and if people in that community are having Ramadan, for instance, or then they might not be able to participate because they will be busy doing rituals that are supposed to be, they need to be following for Ramadan. They might be, fasting all day, or if there's a festival of Diwali, then they might be, spending time with their friends and family, visiting. So they might not have the inclination to come and attend your programs because of their cultural obligations. Physical activity is also less common among recent and long-term immigrants too, especially if they're coming new and they are working 2 or 3 jobs, then they might not have opportunities to come for the tree planting events or other, cool, events that you're going to put together. So keeping that in mind as well, how maybe, doing it on the weekend might, help bring these people out, or maybe, finding multiple day opportunities for people to come and engage with. If they can't come on one day, then they might have an opportunity to come on another day. Immigrant women are less likely to be physically active also due to the lack of time, family commitments, and cultural norms. A lot of women from different cultures have more responsibility to take care of their families as compared to the men in their culture. Also, there are cultural restrictions where women are not allowed to go and explore outdoor environments without the company of their male members of the family. So keeping this also in mind is helpful, because then you're able to develop programs that are more culturally suited. Maybe you'll have a family program where everybody in the family can come together and engage. I'll give you another example. So we have an organization that we work with. It's called Afghan Women Organization. In that organization, it's only all the staff is women, all the participants there are women. So if we send a male staff member to do a presentation or do a program for this group, it'll become a very difficult relationship. So we are very cognizant, when we work with such organizations, and we try to respect the cultural realms under which they operate. So now, after understanding these, common barriers, the next question was how to make these outdoor spaces accessible and welcoming for all. So what can we do in our programming? So as I was saying before too in the beginning, the role of community partnerships is huge. So settlement agencies, these are the agencies that help newcomers come and settle in different geographies. There are multiple settlement agencies that operate in the GTA. So developing a relationship with them will be a very long-term relationship, which will be very beneficial. It has been for us. We are working with, I think, more than 15 settlement agencies in Peel and Halton region. And over the last 12 years, we have done many programs with them. And you have to also understand that settlement agencies work with newcomers, and they are always looking for opportunities for engagement for their clients. So it's a win-win scenario for the environmental agencies and the settlement agencies to work together to provide those meaningful engagement opportunities. We want to engage these people in environmental stewardship programs, and they are looking for such opportunities. So developing a relationship will go a long way in successful delivery of these programs. So faith organizations, yes, they are also big winning organizations, because they also are looking for engagement. A lot of faith organizations, want to engage their congregations in tree planting events or, other, family-oriented, programs. So working closely with some of the ones that fall in your geography can also go a long way. Over the years, we have engaged faith organizations from Hindu religion, from Muslim traditions, from Christianity, from Buddhism, because we try to find, and even from the Sikh traditions. So this is a really good partnership, because I feel that inherently most of the religions have given a very central and positive relationship to environment, and they really want to connect with the environmental organization to kind of reinforce those traditions in their faith. So really good way to build some local partnerships. And the lastly is other community groups. So for instance, we run a health and wellness program. And because of that program, we have over the last few years have made such real progress by connecting with different community groups, such as the senior groups, such as senior clubs, mental health, groups, the Heart and Stroke Foundation groups. So they're local chapters. So I think tapping into some of those groups will also be very beneficial moving forward, because nature and health, for instance, is one area that a lot of different organizations are exploring, and they have understood how important this connection will be for their clients and the members of their communities. And I think, especially after COVID, this is a really good potential area that I think environmental organization can tap into and build upon those partnerships. And I think the results will be remarkable. Communication is the key. Yes, it is the key. And I'll show in some of these examples that I have experienced over the years how important it is to pay attention to the communication. So this was our slogan for many years, caring for the credit. When I first started at CVC, I went to a Sikh temple, I think 2 years into this job, and I was there doing a display for one of their events that was happening. About 4,000 people came by in the temple that night. It was a big night. And I had these, beautiful banners, with trees and river and flowers and whatnot, talking about caring for the credit. And many people came and asked me which bank I was coming from or what kind of a credit card I'm giving them. And I was very puzzled, because every time I look back and see the stuff that I'm displaying, it would not give me any indication. And that night when I was going home, and mind you, I was only two months in my job. So I was going home, and it just clicked me. I said, oh, I understand now why people were asking me about credit, because the slogan says caring for the credit. This kind of a communication messaging was okay 50 years back, when we had these generations after generations of people who were environmental stewards and who knew exactly, when I say caring for the credit, it means caring for the credit river. But now when we have new Canadians who are coming and living here, newcomers who are settling in these geographies, credit is a double meaning word. So it is very confusing. And when they don't even know the name of the river that flows in the neighborhood, how would they connect to that message? You can have a beautiful messaging underneath that caring for the credit, but you will not have people connect to it just because we're missing the word river. So I had to go to my director next day in the morning and inform him that we have to change our communication style and we have to add the word river. So very important consideration in a very simple thing. Keeping your language simple is also very critical, because we are in the environmental field and sometimes we forget that words like native, invasive, species, invertebrates, predator, these can be very difficult and complex words for somebody who's learning English as a second language. So keeping your messaging simple is very critical. Avoid using TLAs. I don't know how many of you today understand what a TLA is, but TLA is a 3-letter acronym. So avoid using that, because if I come and say this to a group, I work for CVC as their MC and we are here to talk about our program CYC. I will lose connection with my audience right away, because they had no idea what CVC is, what MC is, and what is CYC. So it is difficult for even people like you and me to understand these acronyms. I remember when I first started attending our departmental meetings at CVC, they would actually talk about SOPs, and they would say, oh, we need to update SOP 203, SOP 204. And I would just, look at each other, what these people are talking about. But since I was new, I was very shy to even ask, what this SOP means. I thought I will figure this out in a couple of weeks. But after 2, 3 weeks, when this didn't stop, I had to raise my hand and ask people, what is SOP? And then everybody laughed. Oh, Ashu, it is the standard operating procedure. But I was new. I had no idea what SOP means. So, people like me can also, lose that, communication piece. So we have to understand that people who are coming new from diverse cultures and learning English as a second language, they'll find it very challenging. Next thing is to be open to learn from other cultures and traditions. We always sometimes feel that, we know everything, and when we can go on the ground, we can teach people how to do this, that, and anything else. But I think we are in a very nice position here that we can also learn from other cultures and traditions how they see environment. How do they connect with environment? What tree planting even means to people. I'll share another story. In the very beginning of, I think it was 2009 or 10, we had organized a tree planting event in Brampton, in a highly South Asian neighborhood again. But just because people didn't know us, a lot of people were not coming to our tree planting. So as we were settling all the trees and everything else in the neighborhood, I saw a gentleman who was from India, and I immediately connect to them, and I walked up to him and I told him, I said, "Sir, we are doing a tree planting in your neighborhood. Do you know your friends or family who would like to come and plant some trees? Maybe they've never done this ever in their life." And then he was very excited to hear what I was to tell him. And the next thing he said, "Yeah, sure, I will go and bring." There are a lot of my friends who are just sitting in the library, reading newspapers, so I'll go and bring all of them and they will do tree planting. So I said, "Okay, great, that's awesome." But the next question that he asked made me feel amazed, because the next question he asked me was, "So how much are you paying for the tree planting?" I said, "What?" I said, "This is a free event. It's a volunteer event. There is no payment for planting trees." But he said, "Oh, if you're not paying anything, then I don't think so anybody will be interested." And he left. But that question really troubled me, because I said, why was he even asking for money? And then doing a little bit research and talking with some other people from that area. So this gentleman was from a state called Punjab. Punjab is in the northern part of India, and that's where many people who are settling in Brampton and other parts of Peel region, many of them are coming from that geography. And that in India, what happens is, because we have a lot of labor, we have a lot of people there. So whenever a government agency has to, do tree planting, events, they would, hire all these, labor and on like daily wages, and they would come, they plant the trees, and they would go. The volunteer aspect that is connected with the tree planting is very absent in India, unfortunately. Even when I was there, I was living there, I never did any volunteer work till my first volunteer work that I did was in North America when I came here. So I think trying to understand those cultural underpinnings are so important, because they make us unlearn some of the things that we know and we have been doing that way. So I was so happy later thinking that gentleman asked me that question, because otherwise I would have never thought from that angle. So people have different experiences around the globe. Just we have to have that ear, to hear their stories. Sustainability practices differ. It's not that people don't do recycling in different parts of the world. They do it, but maybe the practice is different. So just trying to reorient them, not telling them you don't know anything about recycling, we are going to teach you. I think that might not hit, but trying to understand, yes, we know you know this, but let's try to see if we can think of doing this differently here in Canada. Also, be aware of verbal and non-verbal cross-cultural signs for communication. As I was saying before, in many cultures, having a conversation with women is, considered a little bit, inappropriate. Shaking hands, might not be a very welcoming sign in many cultures. So Keeping yourself aware of such cultural underpinnings will also help in building stronger communications, either with the faith-based groups, or with the settlement agencies, or with the other community groups. Keeping that in mind will be helpful. Transportation. Providing transportation options is also very, very important. We have been very lucky. We are able to provide free transportation for all of our programs to the community groups. And I think that is one reason that we see that the program is accessible for so many people. So I think finding those options. So if you're organizing a restoration project on the trail and you need a lot of people and you have a community group that is willing to come and very happy to participate, I think thinking of, how to fund a transportation option for them will be very, very helpful. Oops, I'm sorry, I missed. Social space. Providing social space in the parks is also very key, because you have to understand that these people are probably coming to the natural areas or the conservation areas for the very first time. And maybe they might not have that ability to come back. If they are seniors, they might be dependent on somebody in the family to bring them there. So creating that space in the parks as a social space for them is very critical for them to create positive memories that they can build upon their experiences. So in our programs, we have always, built an hour after the hike, after, their interaction with the nature, so that they can unwind themselves. So a lot of, groups that come to our, programs, they bring potlucks, they bring sometimes music with them. And in this particular picture is a group that was engaged in ball dancing right after our program finished, because this was the way that they were connecting with that natural space. So I think we have to allow that time and that connectivity for people to connect, because they might be remembering of certain memories from their part of the world when they were connecting with natural space in that geography. So I think we have to give people that opportunity. And I'm going to end my talk with a very similar image that I started with, that we are seeing changing demographics on the ground, and which means that we have to create opportunities for representation, not only in our programs, but also in our staff, but also in our boards, but also in our volunteer base. Because when people from diverse cultures come and see people like them in our staff, when they come and see that people are in the leadership roles in the environmental fields, then they connect better. Then they're able to find those connectors very easily. They actually see themselves in the on the ground work that's happening in the environmental fields right now. If that is not the case, if we don't see that representation, we might miss connecting these people with the environmental field. And there was another slide, I don't know how I missed it. Just give me, oh yeah, here. So I think this was another when I was thinking about Bruce Trail, I was thinking about all the volunteer work that is involved in building the trail and keeping it the way it is. So I think you have a very huge role that volunteers play, and I think that's where you can actually connect with the diverse groups. So engaging newcomer youth, high school, universities, colleges, they have so many newcomer youth that are part of their communities, but these communities or these newcomer youth, they don't know what Credit Valley Conservation is, what conservation authorities are, or what is Bruce Trail Conservancy. So I think building some networks and building some connections with the universities and colleges and the high school committees, I think that can also go a long way in introducing the environmental organizations to such newcomer youth, because they are looking for opportunities, but just because they don't know who we are, they're not able to make those connections and even look to us for those volunteer options. Similarly, the volunteer work opportunities, creating those volunteer work opportunities for new immigrants. When new immigrants come to Canada, they're always looking for opportunities to find any meaningful work opportunities with Canadian organizations to gain Canadian work experience. So a lot of settlement agencies help these new immigrants to find volunteer opportunities so that they can actually start to understand how a Canadian workforce actually functions. Building those networks with the settlement agencies can also bring a lot of volunteers your way for your programs. Also creating group volunteer projects such as tree planting or for removal of invasives or other restoration activities. So instead of recruiting individual volunteers, if we can create some group volunteer projects where a whole temple congregation could come and spend an afternoon doing restoration activities or whatnot, I think that can open really big doors for Bruce Trail. So with that, I stop. I like to talk. So I stop, and I am happy to hear from you. So let me pause my presentation here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ashoo. That was amazing, and I took tons of notes and so much great information. We didn't say this at the beginning, but anybody that's in attendance today, we'd love for you to be able to put some questions in the question and answer function, and Ashoo is going to be kind enough to answer them for us. And there's already one question there, Ashoo, that I'm going to read out to you. And I just want to make people, this is a safe space, and Ashoo is going to be patient with us, so please feel free to ask your questions. But the first one is, what social media platforms do newcomer families use to help plan for events? And in this case, Mark's talking about the Bruce Trail, but we're wondering about visitor experience expectations once they arrive. So sort of two questions there, I guess. What is the right social media platform to engage with a more diverse audience? And secondly, what are some of the maybe expectations that you can share with us that might be something for us to watch out for?
So I think the websites are a really good way. I think most people try to gauge information from the websites. We have tried, because of some of the grants that we had. There was some expectations for us to see some social media impact from those projects. So we tried to use Facebook, Twitter, but again, if English is your challenge, then you might not be active on those platforms, right? But we tried it, and only the English language teachers, so they were a little bit active on those platforms. But for one-on-one engagement piece, I think for information, I think postings on your websites will be the way to go. I think in the immigrant circles, WhatsApp is a very popular platform for people to connect with. There's a lot of businesses that happen on WhatsApp in other geographies. I know in India, WhatsApp has a very active following, and in many other cultures. I think it's catching up slowly here in Canada, because I am also sharing that with some of my colleagues in CVC, and they are opening up their doors to WhatsApp. But I think those are my answers to that.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And I've got a comment from someone that just says, thank you, Ashoo. So I want to pass that along to you. And then there's a question that, as a hike leader, there's been a change in people coming out to hikes, and many are indeed new Canadians. How can we encourage more membership and participation?
So some of the pointers that I had put in my presentation, I think making connections. I think the thing is that it will not happen organically, unfortunately. So I think we have to step out and make those connections and have those conversations with the community groups that we want to engage with. I think we have to start with a small geography. So if your geography is Tobermory and the area, So I think we need to, find out, what are the different agencies that are working there with the community members. It doesn't have to necessarily be new immigrants. It could be, a community organization that's just working and connecting with the people from different, cultures, maybe who are living in that area for a very long time. So I think making those connections is very, very important so that people can understand that this is Bruce Trail, this is what Bruce Trail does, and this is how I can, contribute to it. Even for myself, I have been with CVC for 12 years, and it was only in 2017 when I came to give that talk, I actually understood in entirety, what Bruce Trail does and how you guys do it, how wonderful that, structuring of what volunteers is. So I feel if I can miss it, then somebody who doesn't even know what Bruce Trail is can totally miss the boat.
Okay, that's a point well taken. That's great, and thanks for the answer there, Ashoo. I've got another great question here, and it's from David, and it's referencing our clubs, but how do boards encourage visible minorities to come forward and take leadership positions? So how do we get new Canadians and more diverse communities involved in our boards?
Again, that's a very good question. So in my experience, so I'm not a member of any boards. I wished for many years that I would become part of, some of the organizations that I know, but my family commitment, some of the personal things had kept me away from this. So again, I would say that we need to open, our horizons, our, relationships with different organizations, because the more organizations will know us, the more clients in those organizations will know us. So for instance, I'll just give you an example. So if Bruce Trail is able to connect with, let's say, 3 or 4 settlement agencies. Now, settlement agencies are a very big organizations within themselves. They have so many different, programs and platforms that they provide to these new immigrants. And there's a lot of wealth of technical expertise that actually lives in these settlement agencies. So you can tap some of, those people to be part of your boards. And I think the only way is to, again, connect with organizations. I think we have to step out and we have to build those linkages with other communities. And then people will know what Bruce Trail does. And I'm very, very positive that even with 1 or 2 years of doing this kind of an outreach, which is targeted, I think you're going to see so much info of people and expertise, from different, diverse cultures coming to you, because I think there's a lot of appetite out there. It's just that they don't know how to connect.
Okay, that's really, really helpful. Thank you. And then I've got one more question here, and the question is, would it be better to approach new Canadians through nature and the environment, or through conservation or hiking? Like, what do you think is an attractive way, or what's an element that's exciting to new Canadians?
I would say try out everything, because you don't know what will strike the chord with the audience. In our case, I think just opening up our conservation areas to the newcomers was a very big draw, because many people who were living in our watershed, even for generations, had never, come to Terracotta Conservation Area. Now, Terracotta is only 15 to 20 minutes away from Brampton, right? So even in our parks, when we would do our fall festivals and other festivals, we would not see people from diverse cultures coming, because they didn't know us, right? They would see these, maybe signs, but they had no idea what they can come and even do in a conservation area, how to make a booking. But over the years now, after we have made all these connections with the communities, it's been like 12 years since we've been doing this. Now I think things are changing. Now when I try to book on a pavilion in Terracotta on the weekend, I don't get opportunities because they're already booked. So I think that 12 years of or 10 years of work in the community really paid off, because I remember having this conversation with my manager at the time when I first started. I said, this work is very new. And I told him, I said, give me 10 years before people will start connecting with the CVC on their own. And I think that was such a right mindset, because we cannot change people's hearts and minds in one conversation, right? It has to happen in its due time, and we have to keep building these positive connectors for people to come, engage, experience, and then do it over and over again. And then one day they'll be saying that to their friend, have you ever been to conservation areas? Go check out Bell Fountain area, or go check out Terracotta. So we want that to happen.
That's awesome. I've got time maybe for two more questions. One is, have you seen more use of your conservation areas from new residents? Measurable?
The youth, you mean, right?
Yes.
Yes. I was telling, even in that my presentation to you too, I think that's a huge potential area that I think you can tap into, because our youth, especially coming from newcomer families, they are waiting for such engagement opportunities. So unfortunately, if a newcomer immigrant family, the parents or the grandparents have never made connection with the environment, most likely their kids will also never get to explore those areas the same way, because the parents never opened up that door for them. But nowadays, teachers, schools, they are doing a phenomenal job in opening these kids' minds to environmental issues like climate change. There's so many. We run a program called Conservation Youth Course, which provides opportunities to high school students to come and spend a week with our teams. They do restoration work, they do tree planting, invasive removals, and they capture with that not only the experience working with an environmental organization, but they become champions when they go back, because they see value, right? They can make those connections, even if their parents have not done that, but they are able to spearhead some of those mindset change even for their own families. So that's a huge potential there.
Okay, that's wonderful. So, well, thank you so much, Ashoo, for the amazing presentation and then for answering questions on the fly. And I know the BTC is better because of your teaching and your work here today. And we're going to learn from all the hard work that you've put in over the last 10 years. So thank you so much.
I'm humbled. I'm so very thankful for you guys to giving me this opportunity to come and have this conversation with you. We are learning every day, and I think together we can all make a very strong, positive, collective change in our geographies. And I'm in awe with all the work that you do. So continue doing that, and I'll be here to help you as much as I can and wherever I can.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the sunshine. Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here today.
Bye.
Bye-bye.